Good morning and welcome to our conversation with Joachim Horn at Tele2. He is the EVP and the Group CTO at the operator. And today we're going to talk about LTE Unlicensed and the role it plays within the ecosystem and the services of a mobile operator. And Joachim, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, why don't we start by, can you tell us a bit about what is your role at Tele2 and especially with respect to the different radio interfaces, you know, Wi-Fi, 3G, LTE, and all of them?
Yes, okay, and let me start. First of all, I want to talk about Tele2 a little bit. Tele2 is an operator in Scandinavia based in Sweden. We are operating in 9 countries in Northeastern Europe and also in Kazakhstan. And we are a low-cost operator. We are a fast mover and a challenger. And our tagline is that we deliver what you need, but for less. And so we are always looking for how can we get more efficient in order to give our customers a better service. In this context, you also need to see how we approach the strategy for radio interfaces. Also, we are a low-cost operator. We are fast mover on LTE. We are already rolling out in 6 countries LTE. In Sweden, we are already, since more than 1 year, on 99% population coverage. And the experience is outstanding. LTE brings together exactly what we want: superior user experience and very low production cost. And this is the reason why, strategically, we see LTE as the future standard for cellular for the next years to come. And we see customers migrating from 2G and 3G into LTE relatively quickly. When it comes to spectrum in the unlicensed band, it's mainly Wi-Fi. We are a big fan of Wi-Fi. Actually, we are but we are selling these hotspots, which is on the one side LTE and on the other side is Wi-Fi, and it's being used in Sweden in more than 100,000 cases. So there are many Wi-Fi hotspots out there which use LTE from Tele2 as a backhaul. And Wi-Fi for our customers is extremely important. More than 70% of data today goes over Wi-Fi. So we are very interested that whatever comes in future in this unlicensed band does not harm our customers' need to be able to use Wi-Fi. Now, there is a lot of spectrum out there, in particular in the 5 gigahertz band for unlicensed use. And today it's mainly used with Wi-Fi. In the LTE standardization, there came a topic up which is what's called LTE unlicensed, with the question, why should we not use LTE also in the unlicensed band? And the benefit for that would be that this would be much more efficient in terms of coordination also with the licensed band and generate a much better user experience. So from that angle, it's a very interesting topic. And why do we need that? Because 70 to 80% of usage happens indoor, in particular when it comes to broadband. Now, indoor coverage, in particular with high capacity, is not easy to get. Today, operators try to do it from outside, building big base stations and blast basically through the wall inside. But it doesn't work when it comes to very high capacities. Then there is a need for indoor coverage with indoor antenna systems, optical cells, and so on, which is an extremely costly game. So the question is, how can we approach this in a more cost-efficient way? And the number one step would be actually to make more use of Wi-Fi, to coordinate the use of Wi-Fi with LTE in a much better way. But in the long run, it's very attractive to think about, in parallel to Wi-Fi, without jeopardizing the Wi-Fi quality, to also put LTE into the unlicensed band and combine it with the licensed band. And by that, get deep indoor a much better coverage and also capacity, and which will lead to much better user experience for our customers.
Now, this is interesting because oftentimes we think about LTE unlicensed as a competitor to Wi-Fi, and but at the same time, it's a fact of life that pretty much all mobile operators use Wi-Fi, rely on Wi-Fi in one way or another, and you are ahead of this too. So you see LTE unlicensed and Wi-Fi to coexist even in the same location. So it's not residential Wi-Fi and public venue LTE unlicensed. You see that the two will coexist also in the same location. Is that correct?
Yes. I think there would not be any benefit for operators if we would mess with Wi-Fi CAM. The Wi-Fi is a consumer non-cellular wireless standard which has extremely high value to our customers and also to our operators. So we have no interest to endanger that situation or even to come into a political fight about what's right. I think an unlicensed LTE standard will only have a chance if it is ensured that there is no impact on Wi-Fi. And that's actually what's happening currently in the discussions with operators and standardization, that we look for technologies and they are available to make sure that they can coexist. And first performance measurements I've seen from different companies show actually you can get an excellent LTE performance without major impact on the existing Wi-Fi. And it's using technologies which we are know now in Wi-Fi, for example, listen before talk. It is using the same low power, so there is not a strong LTE signal and a weak Wi-Fi signal. We are working actually on the same levels. And there are other methods like dynamic frequency allocation or frequency selection, which helps to avoid that there is conflict in between a Wi-Fi transmission and an LTE transmission.
Now, you said that the LTE unlicensed shouldn't create any major impact on Wi-Fi. So, obviously, the more transmission, the more use you have, there's going to be an impact of some sort on Wi-Fi. What do you consider to be acceptable?
I would say the only impact I can actually see is that part of this, if you look we are talking mainly about the 5 gigahertz band. Mm-hmm. And there we talk about 300 to 400 megahertz of bandwidth. And the Wi-Fi channel is typically 20 to 40 megahertz wide, maybe 80. And the LTE channel typically 20, maybe 40. So Wi-Fi and LTE will compete among this spectrum. But it's not like LTE takes the spectrum and holds it for all time. The spectrum is only allocated for the moment of transmission. And then it's being given back. So it's a kind of random access. It's like in Ethernet. So many people can use the same cable. And there's methods to avoid collisions, to detect, somebody else is sending and receiving. And by that you can avoid. So from a Wi-Fi perspective, it's just as if another Wi-Fi station would enter the scene. From an LTE perspective, I have additional spectrum I can use in the LTE technology, in the LTE interface, which is actually a little bit more efficient than Wi-Fi. We expect like 50% more efficiency here. And by that mechanism, there will not be a big impact. And for me, not a big impact means as if just another Wi-Fi station would enter the scene. That must be the comparison.
Yeah, so as long as it behaves like Wi-Fi, that's good enough. And do you think that the current regulation, that the listen before talk regulation, that it's prevalent in Europe, Asia, well, pretty much everywhere other than US and China and some other countries, do you think that regulation is sufficient to ensure this?
I think we have not digged down to all the details of coexistence. I think this is still in the research. And I can obviously not speak for the regulator, but I think there must be an interest to make sure that both of the technologies and services can coexist without endangering the other side. And I'm sure that the regulators will look to that. Listen before talk is a good technology, and it's definitely a good start to avoid that exactly that happens, that LTE takes it all, and then there's nothing left for Wi-Fi, right? And the first trials have shown that, as I said, that this is a good way to coexist. Whether it's sufficient or not, difficult to say at that point.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that with LTE license, you get a better user experience. Where is the improvement coming from?
I think that the Wi-Fi is a relatively old standard. Also, it has been developed further and further with MIMO and beamforming and AC and AD coming in. LTE is comparably much younger. The technology is more robust. It's built from a telco-grade perspective, while Wi-Fi comes from a totally other area, more a best effort area. And I think also that the experience on LTE is related to the way how to deal with radio and spectrum. It's very sophisticated, was not built for consumer originally, but now with LTE unlicensed, there is a chance to go more into that space for consumer. But it comes from a robust telco-grade background. It's brand new. It's just 3-4 years old, and that's the reason.
Yeah, so it's I guess it's better in the RAN and better in the way you manage the data. Now,
Yes.
when you have to allocate, you're going to have let's say an indoor location, a venue where you have licensed, unlicensed LTE and Wi-Fi. How do you split traffic? How do you decide which subscriber is which, or which application is on which radio interface?
So first of all, if you're on an operator, so that's the part of the design which needs to happen still. But it's all about the control plane and the control mechanisms behind. The idea is that unlicensed LTE will be just an extension to licensed LTE. Basically, you will never leave the licensed LTE. On licensed LTE, then the phone detects there is an unlicensed band, and it will add that band to the use of the licensed band, and by that increase capacity and probably also coverage compared to if you just stick with the licensed band. It is not intended to only roam on the unlicensed band. And then, of course, a user can always decide to switch the phone to the normal Wi-Fi mode, and that's in the user's hand, right? So I think it's controlled by the network of the operator.
Mm-hmm. But do you have any plans, for instance, to keep voice on licensed or like video on Wi-Fi or something like that might sort of address some of the issues with congestion?
So in the LTE license, the idea is to keep the more real-time services in the license band because the conditions will be better predictable and more reliable because unlicensed band has undefined interference situation. So you go more for the video streaming and download internet access, you would move to the unlicensed band. But let me comment on voice a little bit. LTE unlicensed is obviously a very interesting technology, will not be available anytime soon. I mean, we need to be realistic. Standardization just has started. Until we have the equipment will be 2 years from now. Then it will take a while until we have devices supporting that. So my estimation, before 3 to 4, maybe in 5 years, that will not play really a major role. So we are looking as operator also in the question, how can we make more use of the sheer existence of Wi-Fi? Because if I can use better Wi-Fi, the combination of Wi-Fi and LTE, then these are existing technologies. This doesn't need a new phone. It doesn't need a new chipset to be developed. And one of the first things we are looking at is obviously voice over Wi-Fi. We have today in most, at least dense populated areas, there is Wi-Fi practically now in all buildings. And even if you have a coverage issue with your macro network, you could continue a voice call on Wi-Fi. And we all have seen that the iPhone is now supporting voice over Wi-Fi, and this has given the technology a new dynamic. And we are now starting a trial to see how we can integrate that, how big the value would be for us. But I see a big benefit before moving even to use LTE unlicensed when it's available. I think today is already a big benefit to think about adding Wi-Fi, the capacity of Wi-Fi to what you have in 3G or 4G, in particular to LTE. Mm-hmm. Not only for voice, but also for data.
Yeah. Now you talked about the timeline, and one of the concerns that I hear is the availability of devices, because you say you cannot use your current phone to use LTE unlicensed.
No.
You think that's going to be an issue, down the line in terms of, there is the equipment, the RAN equipment, fine, but then you need to have the phones as well.
It's like it's always, GSM was named God Sent Mobiles because the standard was there, but it took years until the mobiles was there. We had the same in 3G. In 4G, actually, it was not so bad. We had the devices, but now when it comes to LTE Advanced, carrier aggregation announced since 1 or 2 years, still there are only a few phones supporting it. Also, it's a very good feature. And I expect actually the same to happen. We need to add another frequency band, at least one, which is the 5 gigahertz band. To the phone, which phones don't have for the cellular yet. The chipsets need to be adjusted. There's a new chipset required. we need to be able to run 5 gigahertz in parallel to other bands, because LTE unlicensed will be used together with LTE licensed. So that's a number of requirements which need to be developed and also put into the phone in a very power efficient manner. At the same point in time, once you need to deploy base stations, and then there's the question, is this built into the macro base station? Makes not so much sense, because the output power is a fraction. So you need separate base stations you need to deploy indoor instead of Wi-Fi, or in a combination with Wi-Fi. So we are talking about femtocell technologies. And there is the question still about economics. Because what LTE unlicensed does not do is changing the economics of small cells. It is only interesting if this can be deployed in the way how we deploy today Wi-Fi. Actually, we don't. In the consumer case, typically the end user deploys the Wi-Fi hotspot because he has a cable connection with the Wi-Fi there and it works, right? And that's a very cost-efficient way to deploy. If we have to, as operators, go to private houses, that's very unrealistic. Of course, in public buildings, we do indoor coverage anyway. Then it's relatively easy to add this kind of technology. But it is very interesting to expand the use to also the private houses, in particular, big houses, the new buildings with the gold layered windows, where it's very difficult to cover from outside.
So in the case of residential, could you have a model like the femtocell model where the cost is sufficiently low that the subscriber, just when they buy the Wi-Fi access point, it also has LTE unlicensed?
I mean, the model, I think the economics or the dynamics should be absolutely the same. The question is, in the femtocell, why did that not work? Why did that not get a much bigger traction? Because the price point of femtocells has come down reasonably low. I remember the first discussions like 4 or 5 years ago where the discussion was, let's put the femtocells into the shop next to the Wi-Fi router or integrate into the Wi-Fi router and just sell it to the customer or give away subsidized. And then by that, make sure we can improve coverage. It has been done. We did it in some countries, a very small scale, more in a B2B environment. But the big deployment never happened. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons was that we had a lot of interference issues with the femtocells because they use the same band as the macro cell. Now with unlicensed LTE, that could be better. Still, the economics need to be solved. How do we distribute that? How do we make the price point low enough in order to make it attractive?
Yeah, and I guess there is also from the subscriber point of view that goes and buy an access point, Wi-Fi access point. How much would they gain from having LTE unlicensed in their home when the bottleneck is their broadband connection?
That's a fair point. At the end of the day, what LTE unlicensed would bring is definitely much more reliable services in terms of robustness against interference. Wi-Fi is much more sensitive against interference from the surrounding, from neighbors. Here in my house, for example, if I check Wi-Fi, I easily find 50 Wi-Fi hotspots using the same band. And it makes it very difficult to get a good performance. And in LTE unlicensed, even if that would be the case, I think LTE is more robust because of the technology against this kind of interference. So there would be a better service for the end user, but how to make sure that this is attractive to users needs to be found. And it is very much dependent on the economics, on the cost of such devices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about what have you done so far in terms of testing the technology, looking at how it performs, and what are your plans for the future?
Yeah. We have not yet started to test LTE unlicensed. As I said, we are a low-cost operator. We are relatively lean, but we engage in the discussion with vendors and fellow operators. And we think a lot around the question on how to solve the indoor coverage problem. And also the potential capacity problem. Everybody's talking about 1,000 times more data by 2020. And of course, all of us need to think about how do we get this done if we don't get more spectrum, right? And then those technologies are very attractive because you can deploy them in hotspots only. So you don't need to build a big coverage, but wherever you have a high density of traffic, you could use that technology to offload. I have no doubt that LTE unlicensed will perform well because it is the same technology as we use in the licensed band. It's just a different band with some adjustments, lower power, and then compatibility with Wi-Fi. Listen before a talk and so on. But in general, it will be the same technology there, so there's no reason to believe that it wouldn't work. So the trial does not need to show whether it works or not. It is more about the economics, what are the deployment scenarios, what's the business case behind.
Yeah, so it's a business case, not a technology issue. And when you go and you think about deploying it in indoor, I mean, that's the core, indoor public spaces. And you're dealing with enterprise or real estate owners that might have their own Wi-Fi network and are going to be very protective of their Wi-Fi network. You expect them to basically say, hold on, before you come in and you use the same frequency that I use, I want to be really short, or I might not want you because you might create interference with me. You expect that to become an issue?
Maybe not an issue. It's actually today we have cases where some landlords do not want anything else to be deployed than they have deployed. Therefore, I'm coming back to what I said earlier. I think it's very important that we are flexible and we can also work with Wi-Fi as such. I think this is a much lower hanging fruit, so easier to get a combination of the normal Wi-Fi consumers have at home and get a tighter integration or collaboration, maybe is a better word to say, with the cellular standard. And a number of features coming also on the Wi-Fi side with automatic sign-on and much faster registration procedures and so on, Hotspot 2.0. There's a lot of things coming which will make it more attractive to operators also to just take Wi-Fi as a potential technology to work with. And as I said, the benefit would be you don't need new chipsets. It's no new frequency. The things are there, and probably easier also to get around when landlords insist on just deploying their own technology, which is their good right, actually.
Yeah. In closing, can you tell me what do you think that are the challenges in terms of the work that still needs to be done, especially in the short term, for LTE license to succeed?
I think it's very important to think about the use cases, because we should not do LTE unlicensed because we can, because it's possible to do it. Of course it is. We should be very conscious about exactly some of the discussions we just had. What are the deployment scenarios? What is the business case behind? Is the economic model of such a technology better than any other small cell technology? If not, the likelihood that it succeeds is as big as any other small cell technology we have seen today, right? It's just another spectrum. Still, I believe there is good opportunities in it, and by working today already with Wi-Fi and voice over Wi-Fi, I think we do a first step into this direction. My opinion is that the use of the unlicensed band will probably play a much bigger role in the upcoming 5G standard.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, Joachim, thank you so much for the time you spent with us today and sharing your insight. And I would like to point out that this conversation is part of the report on LTE Unlicensed, that it's available from the Sensitivity Consulting website and from RCR Wireless News. Joachim, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Bye.